Imagine this. Now quieter and older, Eric Clapton sits in the corner of a dark recording studio, his eyes clouded with remorse and remembrance. Outside, people continue to believe the tale and move on. However, something cracks inside. He makes the decision to reveal the truth at last, not intentionally, but because the burden of secrets has grown too great. He mentions Pattie Boyd, the woman who inspired songs and was portrayed by the world as a delicate beauty and golden muse. However, the picture was a well-planned deception. Clapton now discloses a more sinister and startling reality, that she never wanted the world to know. He kept quiet for years, in order to preserve her reputation, restraining oneself out of nostalgia or remorse. However, it is no longer the case. The woman who danced on the brink of his every heartbreak and once haunted his lyrics was more than just a muse. She was an expert at wearing masks. Nor was the heartache she left behind poetry. It was unavoidable, vicious and consuming. He doesn't tell a love story now, it's a reckoning. On the set of A Hard Day's Night in 1964, Pattie Boyd played George Harrison. She exuded innocent grins, bouncing hair and golden light. She seemed ethereal to George. She was recognizable to the Beatles, but the decay was spreading within that lovely story. Being the silent wife wasn't enough for Pattie. She was attracted to males who lived like fire, art, and anarchy. The marriage soon became tense. George, a deeper dive into solitude and spirituality, grew farther away. Lost in the shadows of Maharishi retreats and Abbey Road, Pattie became restless. Then Clapton arrived. Clapton was enamored with Pattie when George was in India meditating. In a wild scream, he scrawled, "Layla." As a plea, he wrote Bell-Bottom Blues. However, what appeared to be desire was frequently something more sinister. Clapton developed an addiction to the chase in addition to heroin, perhaps though he knew it would cost him respect, friendships, and perhaps his own sanity. He pursued her mercilessly. Pattie's choice to leave George wasn't solely motivated by romance. In the rock world, it was a thunderclap. However, Clapton's marriage was not a panacea. Their time together was tumultuous. Clapton was intoxicated, broken, and envious. Pattie was adrift, uncertain as to whether she had entered a new cage or fled one. Long silences that screamed louder than guitars were interspersed with furious clashes and affairs. And that, in my opinion, is what makes playing the guitar so intriguing. Rock and roll, rhythm and blues, and the blues. Not a single soul-containing record has been made. Clapton wasn't the end of Pattie's love life. It exploded in every direction, both before and after. Her life was filled with artists, musicians and mayhem. There were rumors buzzing in an alleyway in Soho, like neon. Covert liaisons with Rolling Stones member Ron Wood. Private evenings with well-known painters. Her dark relationships with tortured photographers tore through their lives like wildfire. They swore she was attracted to males wearing bright masks and with damaged pasts, men who were less human and more myth, more storm than cover. And the disturbing reality, she reflected their disorder. She danced in it and occasionally even lit the match, rather than only watching their devastation. Often what started off as admiration became into rivalry. Lovers became rivals. Confidence were turned into collateral. Emotional bonds erupted into complex power struggles, betrayal whispers and jealousies. Some claimed that she was claiming territory, rather than merely gathering hearts. Confusion and emotional devastation would be left behind when an old affair ended, and a new one began. People who came into contact with her frequently departed, burned, unable to determine if they had fallen in love or been entangled in something far more sinister. Out of respect and self-control, Clapton had kept this aspect of her life hidden for years. However, when he ultimately reveals the truth, he portrays her as a weapon rather than a woman who was in love. Dangerously, but not always malevolently. The issue of whether she was truly mine, or merely the next line in her unfinished lyric, tormented many of her admirers. She had the gift of muse and the venom of a tempest. Pattie's status as a muse had deteriorated by the middle of the 19th century. She was no longer only the face of romantic tunes. She was now the focus of whispered discussions and silent apprehension. There were whispers among friends about emotional manipulation, fancy dinner parties that ended in brawls, and tears shed behind closed doors. The woman who was once captured on vinyl was a private and frequently erratic individual, an erratic blend of chaos and charm. Sometimes her laughter filled a room, and other times her presence pushed artists to new heights. However, there were also times when she became icy, and the quiet dragged on like a blade, slicing deeply into interpersonal bonds. In his latter years, Clapton started to allude to the emotional toll her presence had on everyone in her immediate vicinity, not just on him. She had the ability to be both nasty and captivating. According to some, she only showed affection when it benefited her, or guaranteed her position in the spotlight, treating love like money. Others said that because she switched between different men, moments, and identities, she never really understood the emotional debris she left behind. In addition to being the muse, she served as the mirror, reflecting back to the men who loved her their anxieties and insecurities. She revealed their darkest inclinations in the process. Pattie Boyd became both an angel and an enemy, a dream and a nightmare in the world of rock where every song conceals a memory, and every memory bears a scar. And for far more complex reasons than just her beauty, she continued to be memorable to many. Pattie's problems extended beyond romantic relationships. Her private life was rife with emotional minefields behind closed doors. She had tense connections with her siblings, a lifetime distance from some family members, and acrimonious arguments over money, autobiographies, and control over their shared story. Her relationship with her younger sister Jenny, whose ascent to fame as a model led to years of chilly comparison and quiet competition, was the most tense. Passive-aggressive interviews, muttered insults at dinner tables, and photo shoots in which one person refused to even look the other in the eye all occurred. Unspoken resentments persisted for decades. The air between them, according to friends, is dangerous but translucent like glass. For years the sisters drifted away, only to reunite with champagne grins at public gatherings before vanishing into separate cars and silences, even on peaceful occasions like charity events, weddings, and family vacations. Pattie was frequently at the heart of awkward silences and cold conversations. She had a polarizing and magnetic presence. She was greeted like royalty by some, others hardly looked at them. Reconciliation was not only challenging but nearly impossible due to differences in interpretations of the same experience, money, jealousy, and legacy. She publicly disagreed with other female members of the rock community. Ringo's witty wife, Maureen Starkey, and George's solid and protective second wife, Olivia Harrison, followed. Some of the instances were so tense that they were removed from official accounts. Deliberate seat arrangements during Beatles family gatherings to keep them apart, and screaming battles in backstage hallways, at least one occasion where there was obvious relief at Pattie's early departure. Long personal struggles with identity and self-worth also occurred. Even though she was the rock god's muse, Pattie frequently felt unnoticed by men. She told close friends that she worried being remembered for her inspiration rather than her actual self. This strain shifted inward, showing up as weeks of seclusion, protracted absences from the public eye, and depressed spirals. For years she alternated between glitzy highs and agonizing lows, spending one day shut up in bed with the curtains closed, and the next wearing couture on the red carpet. According to those closest to her, she was a woman who was loved by everyone but was always at odds with herself, always pursuing a peace that was never quite within her grasp. Behind the magazine images and nostalgic longing, her life was a battleground rather than a paradise. Decades later, Eric Clapton finally shares his thoughts, not in a memoir or interview, but rather in a voice that shakes from the weight of everything left unsaid. This is confrontation, not merely closure. He is revealing, not merely recalling. Because every love song had a scream hidden behind its melodic surface, there was a man unraveling, and a lady seeing it behind every poetic line. Clapton now reveals more than simply heartache. It's the gradual loss of who he was with someone he loved, feared, and eventually couldn't get away from. He no longer shields Pattie, but he doesn't despise her either. Despite her unquestionable beauty and famous charm, there were mysteries hidden behind the glitz and elegance. manipulation of emotions, icy withdrawal patterns interspersed with outbursts of tenderness and control moments masquerading as affection. In addition to being intoxicating, her presence was addictive and almost ruined him. Clapton recalls the strain that no one else noticed, the hollow mornings, and the loneliness that permeated even as they lay side by side. She was skilled at drawing him in with a look and excluding him with a whisper. It was power, not simply love, and he didn't notice until it was too late since he was engrossed in her myth. He talks about spending evenings pacing hotel floors, wondering who she would become next, and watching her disappear behind closed doors without a reason. He started writing to survive her, not to honor her. Every lovely line was the result of a restless night. There was a storm that had either just passed or was about to start behind every picture of them grinning. He was eventually left cold and broken by the muse who had once stoked his fire. Fans are now shocked not only by Clapton's straightforward speech but also by the revelation that the fairy tale muse they previously revered is suddenly a much more dangerous and human figure, a force that brought about emotional collapse, bewilderment, and manipulation in addition as inspiration. Pattie Boyd is still remembered for the mayhem she left behind, not for the things she produced. Finally, after all these years, Clapton has removed the poetry, allowing the unvarnished truth to reverberate more loudly than the song ever could.